Gracias por continuar con nosotros en Foro Global. Es momento de hacer un enlace Skype para el espacio de Quartz aquí en Foro Global, la alianza de contenidos que hemos realizado con este espacio, con esta publicación que se hace en la ciudad de Nueva York desde hace ya varios meses. Y en esta ocasión le toca el turno a la corresponsal de Quartz para la Casa Blanca en Washington, D.C. Ella es Heather Timmons. Antes de ser esto, previo a esto, fue también corresponsal en Hong Kong y para Quartz ha trabajado también sobre temas relacionados a Asia. Trabajó para The New York Times en Londres y Nueva Delhi, cubriendo la sección de negocios y finanzas. Y también fue editora de temas bancarios para Business Week en Nueva York. Heather, welcome to Foro Global. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I read your piece titled Welcome to a Hell of a Month in Washington, D.C. because of Congress. The summer break is gone, and now the new Congress has to tackle some of the priorities, the legislative priorities that they need to start working right away. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those priorities? What is Congress going to be debating in the upcoming weeks?
Well, some of the most important ones that have to get done in the next month are the spending bill, which will allow the government to continue to operate, and also the debt ceiling, which will allow the Treasury to continue to issue debt and not to default on its debt. Both of those things, if they didn't get extended or we didn't pass a new bill, would be horrible for the markets and horrible for the U.S. in general. But then on top of that, we've got all of this other stuff happening. The National Flood Insurance Program, that's a federal program, it needs to be renewed by the end of September. There's a children's insurance program that needs to be renewed by the end of this September. And then the president has just sort of thrown this bomb into the situation by introducing this suspension of the DACA program. And that, while it is a few months before that goes into effect, it's such an emotional and such a politically charged issue here that people in Congress are hoping to take care of it right away.
There are many people who see the inauguration of Donald Trump with this new Congress, where there is a Republican majority, as total chaos. We were talking before starting the interview, and you mentioned that word, chaos. Do you think that the Republicans are going to finally find the will to collaborate with their president? They have a Republican president in the White House, or at least a man who identifies himself with the Republican Party. Do you think they're finally going to start collaborating with him? Because let's not forget that they haven't found a replacement for the Obamacare, and that's also one of their priorities.
Well, a funny thing happened this afternoon. Trump came out of a meeting with Democratic leaders and said he had just struck a deal with them. And Republicans that I've talked to and other people have talked to are just throwing up their hands. And the deal, it sounds like, maybe a short-term deal to fund the government through December 15th, also get some of the funding in there for Hurricane Harvey, and also raise the debt ceiling again through December 15th. And that's just sort of a short little window. It gives everyone some room to breathe. But this isn't what Republicans wanted at all, because this means on December 15th they have to go back and renegotiate with the Democrats again, and they need their votes again. So every time they go back and they renegotiate with them, Democrats are going to ask for more stuff. So right now, you know, people are just, I don't know, flabbergasted in Washington about the fact that Trump has suddenly aligned with the Democrats.
Wow, that would be like a turning point or a new development in this history called the presidency of Donald Trump. But you mentioned also DACA. You said the president dropped a bomb. And of course, it's, as you said, a very emotional issue. But many people are looking at this as a possibility of having an immigration reform. And the White House has talked about it. And they also mentioned the possibility of linking the construction, the building of the wall that Trump has promised ever since he started his campaign, to passing an immigration reform. How was that taken by news organizations in Washington and by Hispanic organizations? Do you see a possibility of Trump asking Congress to pass an immigration reform, but also at the same time asking them for funds for building the wall?
I think so, and this may be part of the reason that he softened to Democrats today a little bit. To get that spending bill passed, he also needs Democratic votes, and Democrats have been very against this idea of a wall. It's going to cost over $20 billion. Yeah. It's money we don't have. There's no reason to build it, immigration experts say. And a lot of the Republican politicians who live along the border say it's going to be very difficult to get passed. You're going to have to take land away from people. And there's really no reason for it. This is not how immigration is really happening in the U.S. right now. So this, what he did today, may have been a little bit of a reach out to the Democrats to hope that perhaps they will fund the wall in the future.
Wow. Heather, there is also an electoral connection. Congress is going to have a midterm election next year in November, and the whole House is going to run for re-election, and a third of the Senate. Probably President Trump wants to have his own agenda passed by Congress before that, for trying to block it against the electoral campaign of next year. Do you think that the president is going to be able to get as much as he wanted before that election?
Well, we haven't even talked about tax reform, which is something the president really wanted to deal with this fall. With all of the other stuff that we just discussed, it's impossible to think that tax reform is complicated and it's messy and everybody has an opinion and some companies and some industries want one thing and some want another. It's hard to see how that happens, maybe even before the 2018 election. It's definitely hard to see how that happens this year anyway.
Yeah, it's really funny because he has said that he promised to be the greatest president of all times. And his relationship with Congress has been very bad. He hasn't been able to get a single thing of what he wanted, of what he promised as president, because he's not working hand in hand or shoulder with Congress. He has seen Congress as an adversary. Do you see that the president is starting to realize this and that he has to work shoulder with Congress? Or you think that he's going to start having a more collaborative relationship with them in the near future? Because otherwise, his whole agenda, his whole program is going to be blocked by a Congress that is not friendly to him.
Maybe that's what happened today, you know, when he did reach out to Democrats. A lot of the reason he didn't get Obamacare repealed is because there just wasn't a good bill written to do that. You know, history will tell us you can't give things to people and then take it away and have that be popular. And what happened with healthcare in America is people were given healthcare and then trying to remove it is politically impossible. So, you know, maybe that just shouldn't have been the agenda in the first place.
Is General John Kelly a good legislative liaison for the White House? Is he the man who's going to be trying to get Congress to act and to pass the legislation that the president is proposing?
Well, his strength seems to be much more in keeping the White House running much more like a normal, a traditional White House. You know, keeping some of the people with extreme opinions out of the president's office, keeping things running sort of on track. He seems to have really tightly tamped down on the number of people that interact with the president and when people can talk to him and who walks in and out of his office, and making sure that he's getting his opinions from actual experts in the field rather than sort of outliers. So that's where his influence is really. And if he influences the president's thinking and maybe makes, you know, his expectations more realistic, then perhaps, yes, legislation will come from that too.
Who do you see the person most influential regarding this relationship between the president and Congress? Who's the main man or woman who's addressing and calling legislative leaders and asking them and pushing them to pass legislation?
That's a really good question. You know, Trump and the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's relationship has been very rocky. People keep telling me that behind the scenes, Vice President Pence is the one that is really working hard to try to get something done. And so he's constantly been going back and forth to Congress, and he, of course, has got relationships with people there already. And so he's been quietly working to try to get something passed.
Thank you very much for this news for Foro Global. We still need to talk about DACA, but hopefully we'll do that in the upcoming weeks in the next collaboration with Quartz.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Muchas gracias a ti por habernos acompañado. Está el espacio de Quartz en Foro Global. Soy Genaro Lozano. Te invito ahora a que continúes con la programación de Foro TV. Yo te espero mañana en punto de las 11 de la noche para una nueva emisión de Foro Global. Por lo pronto, te deseo muy buenas noches.